My stepkid said my place was in her father's shadow, so I cut every bit of funding and walked away. Her wedding looked magical, under the light of unpaid bills. Don't forget to subscribe and share your experiences below. Let's get started. She said it with a smirk. Champagne in one hand, venom in the other. My wedding will be run by my family. You're just in Dad's shadow. She didn't whisper it. She didn't pull me aside. She said it in front of the planner, the florist, her cousins from both coasts, the hairstylist who didn't know me, and the photographer who already had me cropped out of every shot. Said it like I was a coat rack in the corner. Like I didn't hear her. Like I didn't matter. And that's what made it real. I stood there, frozen. A stack of printed invoices in one hand and my phone in the other. On it, a reminder to confirm payment to the venue by Monday. I'd already paid the first deposit. Quietly, without fanfare, without asking for thanks. She turned her back to me and walked away before I could respond. But I didn't plan to. There was nothing left to say. The smirk she wore, it wasn't just arrogance. It was inheritance. That same sneer her father used to wear when he came to our house to drop her off. The one that said, "I'm the blood here, you're the filler." It had traveled through her, shaped her, bloomed inside her like mold under a leaky sink. And Carol, my wife, had let it, had watered it year after year with silence and soft excuses. I remember just standing there, hearing the tail end of Lauren's voice as she giggled to someone. "He means well. He tries. But, no, I didn't know. Not really. Not until that moment. That's when the counting began. I didn't leave the room. Didn't make a scene. I sat down on a folding chair near the window, outside the circle of chatter and catered charcuterie, and opened the Notes app on my phone. I didn't plan it, it just happened. My thumb moved like it had been waiting for years. Braces, $4,200. First car, $7,800. Used Honda Civic, new tires, insurance for first year. College dorm deposits, $2,500. Emergency room visit sophomore year, $1,340. No insurance at the time. MacBook, $1,200. Christmas gift she never said thank you for. Flight to Europe, $1,150. Spring break, Paris. Monthly allowance through college, $300 per month x 36 months equals $10,800. The list kept going. It got long, longer than I expected. Not just dollars, but minutes, hours, years. Picking her up from school when her dad forgot. Sitting in the bleachers for her swim meets. Missing meetings at work to drive her to last-minute SAT prep sessions. Answering every "can I borrow the card just this once?" with a nod, even when it wasn't just once. I stopped counting when I hit 70,000. That was just the money. The time that couldn't be tallied. She had been 10 when I married Carol. She didn't cry at the wedding, didn't smile much either. Just stood there with that practiced indifference kids where when they know how to make you work for affection. I thought I could win her over. I brought her books, painted her bedroom twice, learned how to French braid her hair. I once drove 6 hours in a snowstorm just to bring her a dress she forgot at home before her winter formal. None of that was in the scrapbook. The photos from that dance? Just her and her friends, all laughing in the arms of their dates. She tagged her mom. She tagged her biological dad. She didn't tag me. Didn't even mention I'd been the one who brought the dress. I remember that night. Carol had hugged me and said, "She notices. She just doesn't say it." But now, watching Lauren float through this wedding prep like a duchess, dismissing me like the hired help, I realized the truth. No, she didn't notice. And maybe she never had. Maybe, to her, I was never more than scaffolding, useful while the real structure was under repair. Now that the house was built, I could be removed, discarded. The insult, in her father's shadow, it wasn't new. It was just the first time she'd said it to my face. I let the rest of the day pass in silence. Signed a few vendor forms. Smiled for the planner. Wrote the check for the event caterer, the one Lauren specifically requested. She said they reminded her of the place she and her dad used to eat at when she was little. I paid without flinching. That night, After we got home, I stayed up late in the kitchen. Carol came down the stairs around midnight. She saw me sitting at the table, alone, my laptop open and the list still growing. "Everything okay?" she asked, voice wrapped in concern but eyes already scanning for signs of tension. I could have told her then. I could have said, "Your daughter humiliated me today," said I was nothing, said I didn't matter. But I didn't. I said, "Just organizing the budget." She didn't press. She never did. She poured a glass of water, gave me a soft kiss on the cheek, and went back upstairs. And there I stayed, me, the accountant of my own erasure, tallying up 16 years of invisible labor. My name was on none of it. Not on the school plaques. Not on the Instagram captions. Not in her speeches. I was the man behind the curtain, pulling the levers, paying the bills, holding the roof above their heads. But when Lauren called me her financial safety net later that week, half joking, with a giggle that stuck in my teeth like poison, I smiled, because I had already decided. I would become the hole beneath the net, the absence beneath the illusion, the silence behind the comfort. And when it all fell, when the bills bounced, the checks disappeared, the arrangements unraveled, they would finally see me, not as a shadow, but as the one who held the light. I didn't scream. I didn't break plates or demand apologies. That's not how you end a war like this. You don't throw fire. You remove oxygen. The morning after Lauren's last insult, the one that solidified her verdict, the one where I became just a financial safety net, I woke up early, long before Carol or anyone else in the house stirred. The sun hadn't even warmed the windows yet. I sat at the dining room table in the quiet, the same spot where I used to teach Lauren how to do long division, back when she still listened to me. And one by one, I began to pull the threads. I logged into the bank account first, the joint one Carol and I had shared for over a decade. I stared at the numbers a long time. I had filled that account like a mason filling stone. Slow, deliberate, every deposit laid down with intention. It had paid for birthdays, broken bones, late car payments, late rent when Carol had lost her job that first year. It had paid for Lauren's textbooks, her therapy, her first adult credit card, even the late-night Uber rides when she was too tired to call anyone else. She'd always called me last. I'd always come anyway. Now I moved the money, all of it, into my personal savings account. Left just enough to avoid suspicion. Just enough to keep the lights on until the end of the week. I closed the browser tab. Moved to the next. Credit cards. 2 of them. One with Carol's name on it, one with Lauren as an authorized user. I clicked into the settings and removed Lauren first. No notifications sent. Just gone. Then I paused at Carol's. She had been using it mostly for groceries lately, and the occasional lunch with coworkers. I froze the card. Next tab, the wedding venue. I pulled up the invoice. The second payment was due Monday. A hefty one, enough to sting if you weren't prepared. I emailed the coordinator, polite and calm. "Please cancel the payment. The bride's family will be handling this moving forward." I CC'd Lauren. Next, the florist. I had recommended them. Knew the owner from years back when I helped him install flooring in his first shop. I called. He answered. "Hey, I need you to redirect the invoice," I said. "Send it to the bride and her biological father." A pause. "Everything okay?" "Everything's clearer than it's ever been," I said. He didn't ask more. He knew me well enough to hear what I didn't say. Then the photographer, the caterer, the stylist who wanted her travel expenses reimbursed. I made my calls. Quiet. Systematic. Not out of anger. Out of necessity. I didn't owe this life another dime. Not one. By the time Carol came downstairs, I was pouring my second cup of coffee. She kissed my cheek. I smiled back. She didn't know the war had ended. But I did. The first tremor came that Thursday. Lauren called my phone twice. I let both go to voicemail. Her voice cracked through the speaker later that night. Sharp, forced cheerful, but there was an edge there. A crack in the foundation. "Hey, so, I think there's some confusion with the florist. They said something about billing me directly. Anyway, could you just fix that?" Thanks. She didn't say please. She never had. I didn't reply. Friday afternoon, the venue called Carol. I listened from the other room as she answered. First, her voice was light. Then it faltered. What do you mean? The payment was stopped? Silence. No, that must be a mistake. My husband. More silence. I could hear the panic bloom in her voice, like ink spilling across a tablecloth. I didn't get up. I didn't intervene. She'd have to walk that call to its bitter end on her own. An hour later, she found me in the garage, sanding down a piece of cedar I'd been meaning to finish for months. Did you cancel the wedding payments? She asked. I didn't look up. Yes. Her breath hitched. Why? She said I was just a shadow, I said. And you didn't disagree. She didn't respond. Just stood there, eyes glossy, lips parted. I waited for a defense. There was none. After a long silence, she left. By Sunday, the panic had fully set in. Lauren texted me at 10 a.m. What the hell? The caterer is off. The photographer quit. The venue says we have no deposit on file. You've ruined everything. Then, 5 minutes later, we're in debt because of you. I turned off my phone. Carol cried that night. Not for me. Not for the weight I had carried. She cried for the fantasy unraveling in her daughter's hands. She cried for a wedding that was becoming a public embarrassment. She cried for the way her ex-husband had suddenly become involved, promising to help with payments he couldn't possibly make, posturing like a hero, showing up in a borrowed suit to make things right. The same man who hadn't paid child support in years. The same man whose birthday cards always arrived 2 weeks late with gift cards that didn't work. He was a father again, not because he changed, but because I stepped aside. The chaos built fast. Deposits were lost. The cheaper venue they booked as a backup had water damage and a flickering light in the foyer that buzzed like an exposed wire. The florist they turned to required full prepayment, and when that didn't come, he canceled. The bridal party dropped out one by one. Even Lauren's maid of honor, her cousin, texted me privately. I'm sorry. You didn't deserve this. I didn't reply. The night before the wedding, Carol stood in the kitchen with her hands clenched around a wine glass that never reached her lips. She stared at me like I was a stranger. Maybe I was. Maybe I always had been, just a placeholder wearing a paycheck. They think I ruined this, I said quietly. But I didn't touch anything that wasn't already broken. She didn't argue. She didn't deny. She just whispered, "She's still your daughter." No, I said. She never was. The wedding day came. They switched to a low-rent banquet hall in the suburbs. The kind where the ceiling tiles stained yellow in the corners and the lights buzzed too loud. No staff after 8 p.m. No live band. A DJ with scratch tracks and a dead mic. No champagne tower. No ice sculpture. Just folding chairs and lukewarm buffet trays. They didn't invite me. I didn't go. Instead, I went to the lake. The one Lauren used to love as a girl. Back when she was still small enough to sit on my shoulders. Before she learned what step meant in stepfather. Before she learned that not real dad gave her permission to forget everything else. I brought a flask. Sat by the water. Watched the wind peel ripples across the surface. They say water remembers. I wonder if it remembered her laughter back then. I wonder if it remembered mine. When I got home, Carol was already in bed. Alone. She didn't look at me. I didn't try to speak. We slept beneath the same roof. Two strangers who had once pretended they were building something real. But now the scaffolding was gone. Now they could all see what they'd stood on. And how quickly it vanished when I stepped away. The morning after their wedding, I woke up to quiet. A kind of quiet that doesn't come from peace, but from exhaustion. The kind that settles after a storm has torn through and taken everything loose with it. The kind that leaves only air and regret. I didn't ask how it went. I didn't need to. I could already hear the answer in the way Carol moved through the house. Slow, hollow. Her bare feet dragging against the tile as if she were afraid of what the silence might say if she broke it. I sat at the kitchen table drinking coffee that had long gone cold. The smell of burned toast lingered in the air. That was breakfast. That was us. Her phone buzzed. Again and again. Messages. Missed calls. I didn't ask from whom. I already knew. It was Lauren unraveling in real time. The wedding hadn't gone as planned. The pictures said it all. I saw them later, tagged, posted, deleted, re-uploaded with different filters as if changing the light could erase the truth. But light doesn't lie. It only exposes. In the photos, the hall looked small. The carpet stained. The decorations cheap. There were no chandeliers. No shimmering candles. No glowing smiles. Just faces lit by harsh fluorescent bulbs and disappointment. The photographer they'd hired last minute had used a phone, not a camera. The cake leaned to one side like it was trying to escape. The groom's smile looked forced, Lauren's eyes empty. Even through the pixels you could see it, the weight of pretense collapsing under its own cost. People whispered. They always do. Families like ours attract gossip the way wounds attract flies. The stories grew overnight. How the stepfather, the rich one, the provider, had pulled out at the last second. How the bride had thrown a fit. How the mother had cried behind the venue while the father argued with staff about refunds he couldn't afford to pay. Everyone knew, even if they didn't know the details. They could smell the desperation. By noon, Carol's voice broke the silence. "She's saying you humiliated her," she said softly, not meeting my eyes. "I didn't need to," I replied. "She did that herself." "She's your daughter," she said again, out of habit. The way one says please or thank you without believing in the words. "No," I said. "She's your reflection." She didn't argue. Maybe because she knew it was true. Maybe because she didn't have the strength to fight anymore. She just sat across from me, staring at her hands. Her wedding ring caught the morning light. It looked heavier than it used to. Later that day, a letter arrived, hand-delivered by a courier, the kind you pay extra for when you want your disappointment to feel official. It was from the banquet hall. They were keeping the deposit. Non-refundable, it said, due to late cancellation and unpaid balance. I placed it on the table beside the untouched wedding invitations still stacked in their box. Another relic of promises no one intended to keep. The florist followed suit. Then the DJ. Then the caterer, who demanded full payment for ingredients already purchased. It was all coming due. Every unpaid favor, every borrowed dollar, every overlooked cost. A bill with my name scratched out but my fingerprints still all over it. Lauren tried to fight it. I saw the texts Carol tried to hide. Begging messages to vendors, to friends, to her biological father. Pleas that sounded too much like the ones she'd once mocked me for. But pity is a currency that runs out faster than money. Within days, she was left with nothing but debt and silence. Her father, the real one, as she called him, didn't step up. He made excuses. "Times are tough. Work's been slow. I'll get to it soon." The same chorus I'd heard for years while I filled his role without acknowledgement. I almost admired his consistency. By the end of the week, Carol stopped pretending. She admitted what I'd known all along. Lauren and her new husband were already sinking. Credit card debt, unpaid invoices, a honeymoon canceled before it began. The photos on social media vanished one by one. The new profile picture, the smiling couple by a broken fountain, lasted less than a day before she took it down. I didn't laugh. I didn't gloat. I just sat in my chair and breathed. For once, I wasn't the emergency contact. Carol wrote me a letter a few days later. Not a text. Not an apology. A letter, 3 pages, careful handwriting, the kind of restraint that comes from knowing words won't fix anything. She said Lauren was blaming everyone but herself. That she and her husband were fighting, drowning in bills. That people were whispering, asking questions she couldn't answer. That maybe I'd gone too far. I read it once. Then again. Each sentence a familiar melody. Guilt disguised as reason. Sorrow dressed as moral authority. "You could have helped," she wrote near the end. "You could have saved her from this." I smiled. The kind of smile that feels more like a wound closing than joy. "I already did," I whispered to no one. "For 16 years. Then I folded the letter and placed it in the drawer where I kept receipts. The graveyard of my generosity. Nights grew quieter after that. No calls. No visitors. Just silence, dense, heavy, earned. Sometimes I'd walk past the empty dining room, see the space where we used to sit for family dinners. The chairs still faced the same direction, but the illusion of togetherness was gone. Carol spoke less, moved slower. She'd stare at her phone for hours, waiting for a message that wouldn't come. I didn't comfort her. I'd done enough comforting for a lifetime. The world outside kept moving. Bills arrived, got paid. Work continued. But inside the house, time slowed. I noticed small things. The faint groove on the table where Lauren once carved her initials. The scuff on the doorframe from the day she moved out for college. The wedding photo of me and Carol that now looked staged, artificial. Sometimes, at night, I'd replay Lauren's words in my head, in her father's shadow. I'd wonder what that shadow looked like now. If it reached far enough to cover the cheap banquet hall, the unpaid florist, the empty honeymoon suite. Maybe it did. Maybe that was the point. Because when you live your life on borrowed light, you never see the dark coming. One evening, I found a small box on the front porch. No note. No return address. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was a photo frame, silver, slightly tarnished. The picture inside was from years ago. Lauren at 12, standing between me and Carol at the county fair. My arm was around her shoulders. She was smiling, sun in her eyes. On the back, in faint pen, someone had written, "Thank you for everything." No signature. I stood there for a long time, the box open in my hands, the evening air thick with the smell of rain. I wanted to feel something. Anger, grief, maybe forgiveness. But what came instead was stillness. Because I knew what the message really meant. It wasn't gratitude. It was acknowledgement, too late, too faint, too incomplete. Still, I placed the photo on my desk. Not as a reminder of her, but of me, of what it cost to build something that never saw me until it collapsed. And as I looked at it, I realized something simple, something final. They would recover. Slowly, clumsily. They'd rebuild their little world without me. But nothing they built would stand the same way again because now they knew the truth. Comfort is not born from love. It's born from someone paying the bill. And for the first time in their lives, the bill had come due. People think betrayal is loud. They imagine screaming matches, shattered plates, slammed doors. But betrayal, real betrayal, is quiet. It walks on soft feet. It happens in silence across years. It hides behind smiles and soft nods and long pauses. It lives in the space between what is taken and what is never thanked for. That's what I learned. It didn't arrive the day Lauren called me a shadow. That was just the headline. The betrayal came slowly in the mundane moments, the unpaid gratitude, the daily erasure, the way Carol let it all slide by like rain down a window, refusing to wipe it clean, refusing to look through it and see me drowning just beyond the glass. I didn't ruin a wedding. I didn't sabotage anyone's dreams. All I did was stop funding the fantasy. And the moment I did, the world they'd built, the house of cards made from entitlement, silence, and pretend respect, collapsed. Fast, loud, violently. I didn't celebrate. There was no champagne in my moment. Just a long, steady breath and the realization that peace sometimes feels like absence. That stillness can be its own reward. But even silence leaves echoes. Weeks passed, then months. Lauren didn't call. Neither did her husband. They moved, I think, somewhere smaller, less glamorous, closer to what they could actually afford without someone else's wallet propping them up. Carol stayed. That surprised me. She moved through the house like a ghost, like she was scared to bump into the man I had become. But I wasn't new. I had always been this, just quieter, softer, more hopeful. Now I was simply honest. We didn't talk about the wedding again. Not directly. She'd mention Lauren in passing. Always with caution, like she was testing the ground before stepping forward. I never bit. Never asked for updates. Never pretended to care about the life I had been cut from. Instead, I worked, ate, slept, lived, without fanfare. Sometimes at night I would sit in the study, the same room where I once wrote checks for Lauren's tuition, where I booked that trip to Paris, where I spent hours crafting the perfect wedding spreadsheet, and I'd stare at the ledger. Not the digital one. The real one. Leather-bound. Handwritten. Every dollar accounted for. Every cost logged. I kept it not out of bitterness, but because history demands a record. We forget too easily when we don't write it down. On the last page, in a blank space I'd saved without meaning to, I wrote a single line. Love without respect is not love. It's labor. Then I closed it. People around us noticed, of course. They always do. Friends asked why I wasn't at the wedding. Carol lied, said I was sick. Said there'd been a scheduling conflict. I didn't correct her. Let her patch the cracks however she wanted. One of her sisters asked me more directly. You really didn't go? She said. Her tone wasn't accusatory. Just curious. No, I said. She blinked. But, you paid for all of it, didn't you? I didn't answer. Just sipped my coffee. That silence told her everything she needed to know. She never brought it up again. Lauren finally reached out 7 months later. A letter. No return address. Typed. Cold. It wasn't an apology. It was a transaction. She asked for help. A loan. Something small in her eyes. Just until we get on our feet. Said things were tight. Said the credit card companies were being unreasonable. Said they might lose the apartment. Not once did she use the word dad. Not once did she acknowledge what came before. What was lost. What she helped break. She ended it with, I know you're not obligated, but I'd appreciate it. I folded the letter. Placed it in the drawer. Same one where Carol's apology sat. Same one where the picture frame lived. My own little museum of regret. I didn't reply. Obligation had been the currency she paid me in for 16 years. And now that the account was closed, she discovered what the rest of us already knew, that real currency has value only when backed by something real. Carol never left. But she never came back either. We slept in the same bed, ate at the same table, but the distance grew in small ways. She'd flinch when I used my full voice. She'd pause before asking for anything, as if permission had to be earned now. Sometimes she'd reach for my hand and stop halfway, as if remembering too late that we weren't the same people anymore. We weren't. The woman I married, the one I sacrificed for, believed that love could excuse silence. That if you ignored disrespect long enough, it would vanish. That eventually, time would wear me down until I accepted my place as provider, not partner. But she was wrong. Because what she didn't understand, what Lauren never learned, is that the cost of silence is not paid in arguments. It's paid in exits. Quiet ones. Permanent ones. Even if the body stays, the man who carried everything is already gone. Sometimes people ask me if I regret it, if I feel guilty, if I wonder what might have happened had I just kept my mouth shut, kept the money flowing, kept pretending that blood didn't matter when the knife came out. But here's what I ask in return. Would you fund a lie that denies your name? Would you keep paying to be invisible? Would you sign another check knowing it will be followed by contempt? The truth is, they didn't just erase me. They monetized me, turned my effort into expectation, turned my sacrifice into silence, made me a ghost in a house built with my own hands. And when I finally left, not physically but financially, emotionally, they didn't mourn. They panicked. Because for the first time, the mirror showed them exactly what they were without me. Not victims. Not betrayed. Just unsupported. Now I live in that quiet. It's not joyful, but it's honest. I read more. I walk. I breathe. I eat meals that stay warm. I listen to music without hearing the door open with another demand. I write checks only with my own name in mind. I keep the lights on for myself, no one else. And slowly, I feel the weight of years, the unseen burden of being everyone's foundation, fall from my shoulders like dust from an old coat. It doesn't crash. It just drifts. And I let it. So this is where the story ends. Not with revenge. Not with redemption. Just with the absence of expectation. Lauren has her husband now. And the bills. And the silence. Carol has her truth. The shape of a man who once gave everything. Now sitting across from her, unreachable. And me? I have the ledger. And the last entry will never be paid in money. But in this question I leave with you, whoever you are, Reading this, was I wrong? Was I wrong to let them feel the emptiness they handed to me for years? Was I wrong to make respect a requirement? Or is love without recognition just charity in chains? You tell me, because I gave them everything, until I gave them nothing, and in that nothing, I finally found peace.